Now, this, ladies and gentlemen, is their new anti-reverse clutch mechanism, the new Super Stopper. Shimano claims IPX8. This will be the first reel ever to be IPX8. The only other reel that had an IP rating is the Penn Torque 2, or the Slammer was IP68. Gentlemen, ladies, and anyone in between, I welcome you all. And today, using nothing but the power of the internets, we're going to do a full teardown and overview of Shimano's latest rendition of its flagship egg beater, the Stella FJ. Now, what do I mean by all that? Well, Shimano has gone ahead and released a video showing some renders of the interior of the reel. And me being somebody who owns a couple FIs, have a Essence, have fished Vanquishes and Twin Powers, and been inside all of them, I can kind of give you an idea from the perspective of somebody who has torn them apart and beat on them. Is this going to be a worthwhile upgrade? Or is this a reel that should demand your $700 or more? Right off the bat, looking there at the rearward portion of its oscillation system, the only thing I really notice that's of any difference is this right here. We'll get into that a little bit later. Micro Module 2 gearing. That's the first thing they bring up. And as somebody who loves Shimano products, and I always get a kick out of when they give names to things that don't really need them. Micro Module is kind of unique. They use smaller gear teeth, etc. And I always joked that in the FI, it wasn't these gear teeth that they're talking about. It's these gear teeth. Whether or not that's really true, I can definitely tell you that the Stella FI has larger gear teeth than the Shimano Essence, or Xsense, whatever you want to call it. And these don't appear to be any different than the Xsense's gear teeth size and shape, but I'm not a gear engineer. I'm not going to get into that. But what I can tell you is I do own a few Metaniums. I have an Antares. I have Aldebaran BFS reels, tons of Japanese micro module reels, and I don't notice a difference between that and other mid-level or high-end baitcasters in terms of gear smoothness versus a micro module gear. Now, what I find funny is these two gears are out of a Van Staal. They use gear teeth that are a fraction of the size of the Stella FI and FJ, and anybody who has owned a Van Staal or a Z-Bass knows that these reels are coffee grinders. So gear size isn't always everything. So whether or not micro module and the gear size makes a difference, I'm not buying it. I don't believe that it does, but it is cool to have in a reel. I find that it holds grease better. They're easier to grease, is the best way to put it. Doesn't really make a difference for most people, but if you're the kind of guy that likes tearing stuff apart, it does. Now let's back this up another second. And SILENTDRIVE. This is their X-ship ball bearing at the base of the pinion that is mounted to the frame. Then there's a washer. Now on the FI there is a washer, and then an O-ring, a rubber O-ring on the base of the pinion. On Daiwa reels there's a washer here and a ball bearing here, and that washer generally is bent. Shimano usually uses a rubber O-ring. And if we go to here, you can see that same washer down here and that black O-ring. And then you have the X-ship ball bearing. So what did Shimano do here? I don't exactly know, other than it looks like they took the aluminum gear, brass gear out of the FI, and the aluminum idlers here. Give it a second to bring in the other one. There's still be one more up here. There it is. Now, these on the Stella FI are brass, and these two are aluminum. On the Essence, this is plastic or nylon, and these are aluminum. So I can't really tell the material that they're using here, but it doesn't look like it's an almite-coated aluminum or metal. It looks like nylon. And if they're trying to reduce vibration and noise, The last thing I want to do is put a hard coat gear there. So they would want to kind of use a softer material. And if you've seen on the Corrado K and some of the other bait casting reels, they're putting nylon or Delrin in places where aluminum and brass have been in the past. It's not a bad thing. The only noise you really do hear out of a Stella FI is this interaction here. So is that going to wear on you if it's made out of plastic? Absolutely not. So I think that's kind of cool. Not worth your money, though. You don't hear it when you're out on the water. You just don't. It's something that when you're sitting at the table spinning it, you'll hear like a high-pitched whir, which is kind of cool, actually. Not many reels have that sound except for the newer Shimano reels that use worm gear oscillation. Now, the Hagane gear, man, I told myself almost a year ago I'd never say that again on the internet after I said it once. But this is their forged aluminum gear. They don't really do much machining. It is really a cold forged gear. It is one of the better gears in the business. Daiwa's DigiGear is great. Some of the higher end gears from Penn are great. What you find in the new Makira is very similar, where it's also a forged gear. The Stella FI uses the same type of technology, and it looks like they haven't changed much here in the FJ. Maybe they, like I said, rounded off some portions of the gear or changed the angles. I don't even know. That doesn't bother me at all, but it looks like it is a hard-coated forged aluminum main gear, same as what you find in the FI. And the worm here looks to be the same, a coated aluminum. And I can't tell, it might be just a render, but these look like they could be a coated metal as well. The ones that you find in the FI are stainless. So it's tough to tell in the render, but that could be the case if these are actually like a friction reducing coated aluminum or metal. I don't know. X-Protect. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Shimano claims IPX8. This will be the first reel ever to be IPX8. The only other reel that had an IP rating is the, what is it, the Penn Torque 2, or the Slammer was IP68, which is basically you can spray a hose of water on it for a little while and the water will get through. Now, the weird thing, and this is where I want you guys to really pay attention, I'm not trying to boss you around, but the old Stella FI used rubber lip seals that actually made contact throughout portions of the reel, mainly at the anti-reverse clutch. This is the rubber seal that they used. It is a single lip and nothing else. It's not like a dual lip seal that you see on the Saragossa and Spheros. And this little cup below the rotor, the bottom edge right there, if you can see that with my wacky mouse pointer, barely touches, barely touches that rubber seal. And it's a strange rubber. It's not like a silicone rubber. It's more of a harder, non-stretchy rubber. So it's it wears very well, but it doesn't make a lot of contact. Now, if you look at what they have going on here, this, ladies and gentlemen, is the shaft seal that is compressed by a black cap. It's like the rotor nut that you tighten down to keep the rotor on the reel. This portion here is the rotor nut lock. So you have the two screws that go into here that compress this little piece of rubber here that keep this lip seal in place, which keeps water out of that main shaft and pinion. Then you have your main shaft ball bearing that keeps the shaft centered well. And now everything else below here is where it kind of gets a little interesting. This light gray here and here is your rotor. So you have the rotor nut, the rotor nuts, or the main shaft seal, the rotor nut, the rotor, and then this right here is very similar to what you see in the Essence, where in the Essence it looks to be all on the same plane, all level. Only there's more little staircases and more little ridges and lips. And what that is going to do, if water is sprayed up against it, water is going to have a difficult time getting all the way through and getting into your anti-reverse clutch here. Now, the other thing that's really cool is Shimano redesigned their anti-reverse clutch. The entire mechanism is redesigned, and it's not an off-the-shelf part like you would find in a Daiwa, or an off-the-shelf part that you would find in an Akuma or a 13 Fishing or any brand for that matter. Shimano does use a unique anti-reverse. system, and this is a new one altogether. It looks to be more compact, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But you have, again, this white piece here is literally a metal washer with some weird shapes and contours in it. But what I'm curious about, for it to be IPX8, it has to be more than just a fancy labyrinth or a maze for water to try to get into. This cutout here is what I'm very curious about. I assume it is either greased or there's an O-ring in there. Now, Shimano's going to have to come out with something else to explain our IPX8 rating. I just found out today when I was doing this video, because I thought it was kind of an open, airy design, and then I saw that IPX8, and I'm assuming this is a greased kind of chamfered or just a lip in here. So I don't know yet. Nobody knows yet. But if that is greased and this is fully sealed, that is awesome. And it's not a very complicated design, because all this is just a fancy molded washer that is compressed between the rotor and the anti-reverse clutch sleeve. That's it. That's all this is. This looks very complicated. It really isn't. This is the rotor nut. This is the rotor. This is that fancy washer. And that's your anti-reverse clutch sleeve that runs inside the super stopper. This brass piece is your main shaft. And this orange crap is nothing but, I don't know why. They're just kind of hinting that's what they're guarding, I guess. I don't know. Moving along. Oh, you gave me another water droplets coming through. And it's taking a shower. And now this is the line roller. Again, it's a ball bearing. I'm assuming that's a ball and a bearing. You can see one down here too. And we don't know really what's going on here. Is this exposed on the outside here? Is this a cutaway? It's kind of tough. I mean, I would understand if it was cut away from the top, but it looks like this part might be open. I don't know. I've seen some of the renders in the past, and some of them were a little confusing. But it is what it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, is this reel worth the upgrade? An upgrade? I don't know. They're saying it has a slower oscillation system, which would mean that the angle in which the line is laid is shallower, which means for every, we'll say 50 feet of line, the line doesn't have to change direction coming off the spool as much, which will give you more uniform and longer casts. It's very rare you can increase casting distance in a reel that is not a tall spool, but they do claim that some of the spools are larger than their old ones. Maybe they have a 1000 and a 4000. In this image, they're not comparing the old versus the new. They do say, however, that they changed some of the contours. We don't know if that makes a difference. We haven't cast one yet. And casting performance comparisons really aren't worth much. There's no way to get a control. Now, this, ladies and gentlemen, is their new anti-reverse clutch mechanism, the new super stopper. We call this one the super duper stopper. Has more of like a clover leaf style, maybe if it had more leaves, but it's the same idea. There's 6 cylinders. We don't know if there are springs that keep them loaded against the AR clutch sleeve in the center. It looks like an interesting design, because on previous designs, this metal overleafed clover leaf is above the cylinders. It doesn't really interact with them that much. So I am very curious to see if this functions differently. I can definitely see this design not needing any springs, because it would just turn a direction and everything would bind up. So I'm very interested to see if that is the case with this anti-reverse clutch sleeve. I like the design. It's more simple, and it may be able to take some grease. Out of all the AR clutches out there, Daiwas and Akumas and everybody else, they can take some oil or some grease now. Shimano Super Stoppers, nope. Any oil and any cool temperatures, your clutch will fail and would spin backwards, essentially. This looks like it may have the potential to be a little bit different. And a lot of guys, and again, I had 75 emails, maybe more, That's just emails at my tackleadvisorsinitiative@gmail.com email address, not including what comes through my Instagram and private messages on Tackle Tour and Stripers Online asking me tons of stuff about this new Stella. So that's why I'm doing this video. They asked me, is it a plastic rotor? No, it's not plastic. It says it here on the interwebs. It's metal. And it looks like to me that the 4,000 and under use sheep fur, and the 5,000 size, which is kind of new, uses charcoal. And you have your wave spring. Okay, what do you do? I was kidding. Wave spring is cool in spinning reels. Wave springs used on bait casting reels like the Antares and the Aldebaran, or just their high-end bait casters in general, is completely pointless. Because the only thing on a bait caster the wave spring does is keep that drag star centered when you tighten and loosen the drag. On a spinning reel, it allows for a little bit more even pressure increase. So you get a little more linear drag performance. They say they've changed the angle of the bail, and then I don't know if they really redesigned it. I don't know. The old bail was fine. Although mine loosened up here a few times. I had to Loctite it again twice because the screw that held the line roller to the arm loosened up, which was weird. And they have a new line clip. I hated the Shimano line clips. I really do. Once you get the line on them, it was very difficult to get it off. Now, what else? We're not going to say this again. Here we go. This here. See if I can zoom in a little bit. This right here is that glorified washer. That's all it is. It has fancy contours. That's their new AR clutch mechanism. So water can splash in any way it wants, and water, unless it gets up underneath this lip here, up in there, and then through the labyrinth, and through that greased seal, that's the only way it's going to get in and do any damage. And the way these spinning reels are made nowadays, if they have a thread-in handle that kind of threads in directly to the main gear, which is what Shimano and Daiwa would do on their reels nowadays, at least some of their better reels, you have a nut on this side, so that gets sealed off, so this ball bearing never has to worry about water. They have a rubber lip here to keep water out of this ball bearing. The frames, since they don't have anti-reverse on-off switches anymore, you don't have that opening where water can get in. And then you're just left to contend with water getting in at the main shaft, that spool shaft, and the rotor nut underneath at the anti-reverse. And I'm hoping that this new design works. Because if you're a guy that fishes rivers and you're releasing a fish, you dunk your rod and reel, the butt in the water. The more waterproof your reel is, the longer it's going to last like new. That's why it's a big deal. I'm not skishing with a Stella. I've dunked my Stellas and all that kind of stuff in salt water, but I'm not swimming to a rock in a river unless I fall in, which luckily I haven't with any of these Stellas. But it's nice to see that it can take some spray and can take a dunking, and I don't have to worry about water getting in here and emulsifying with any of the greases and oil, which will degrade over time, diminishing the performance. So it's good to see that IPX8 rating. We'll see if it's accurate or not. That's a different story. And I think I've covered pretty much everything I wanted to. That's pretty. I ain't gonna lie. I don't know if these are drain holes here or vent holes to allow the line to dry, since if these are actual holes that are drilled completely through, that tells me that they're paying attention to their saltwater guy. This isn't a big pike reel. This is a 250 yard of 30-pound braid capacity saltwater reel. Probably coming in at somewhere around 14 ounces. Can I get any more specifications on that? Can I? Spectable. How many grams? 265, really? Okay. Boom. I don't know if that's right. I don't know if that's right. Everywhere else it said to be determined, and I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. In the past, the 4000 and 5000 Stratix and other reels were same body, different spool. You can clearly see in this render, this is a much deeper spool, and we're going to have to see. If that's the case, in my neck of the woods, that is only useful for chasing false albacore that don't really require a lot of grunt, just a little bit of capacity because they burn off, 50 yards, that kind of stuff. If it's a 30-pound bass or a 40-pound bass or 20-pound bluefish, in current, you do need the guts of a beefier, larger framed, larger, more sturdy drive gear, other than what you find here. And the handle itself has to be a little bit more sturdy. So, with that being said, yeah. Would I recommend this over an FI? Man, I think the prices have come down just a little bit on this. If you're new to the super premium reels, I'd buy this over an Essence, I guess, I would say. It's the latest and greatest and newest. It doesn't look like they're taking a step backwards like I've seen in previous years. But Daiwa just came out or announced with their new Exist, which is a monocoque magnesium framed mag sealed beast looking of a reel. That one thing, if there is a knock against Stellas, they're not they're not featherweights. They're kind of a little bit on the heavy side. 170 grams. Let's see, how many ounces is that? Six ounces? That's getting down there. Okay. Okay. I mean, I'm rolling around with this guy here. I have a double paddle handle on mine, so we'll count that. So 215. All right. Mine is a little tiny bit heavier than that. So comparing that to what you would get out of it Exists, I think the new Exist is about a full ounce lighter. Don't quote me on that. I haven't seen the specs in a while, but I also heard that this number is going to be coming down as well, assuming that's yen. Yep. I heard that this number is going to be closer to the 70,000, but the U.S. market reel, I think, is going to be priced lower. The global Japanese market reel, I think the price is going to stay a little bit higher. That's the rumor that I heard on the interwebs. I haven't really seen any U.S. pricing yet. I haven't really looked, to be honest, but let's see. I do like the fact that they have a couple different options with the double paddle handle, which, guys, if you guys have ever fished a spinning reel with a double paddle handle, it really is a pleasure. When you're done with your cast, say where you're bouncing a soft plastic along the bottom, something like that, a drop shot, you don't need the super duper high gear ratio reel to get the line back. Just take that double paddle handle and give it a spin, and since it's perfectly balanced, it just comes right back to you. For the longest time, in the 90s and in the early 2000s, every reel had like a counterbalanced handle. Why they got rid of them, I'll never know. That was pretty nice feature to have, even on like old cheap Bass Pro Shops reels. That balanced handle was always nice. The Shimano Spyrex, one of the more basic $50 reels, had a double paddle handle, and not many other reels in the States ever came with double paddle handles. And to buy a Shimano Stella double paddle handle, it's a $200 Yamaha handle. If you want to buy it for a U.S. market, because we never got the SSDH. The Shimano Sophia had a couple of these as well. The Daiwa Emeraldes has the double paddle handle option as well at about $150, all the way up to $300. So they're out there, but not in the U.S. market. And my one gripe with the FI is the limited gear ratios, and the FJ in the U.S. market is no different. They're only bringing over one gear ratio per size, and it is the fast gear ratio. So expect 3 feet of line per crank, which in my opinion is way too fast. unless you're just using it for drop shotting. So I think we covered pretty much everything I wanted to go over. If you have an FI, is it worthwhile upgrading? No. No. Even if you have the previous edition Stella, it's probably not even worth it. But if you're just stepping into it, take a look at this or the Exist. Yeah, I think that's about everything. That about covers it. But man, what is this all about? From the perspective of a saltwater surf guy, that IPX8 is intriguing. And with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I know this is a little bit different than what you normally see from me. I figured with all the questions I've got over the last few weeks, this is the best way to cover it. And I appreciate the time you guys spent here. Without you, I wouldn't be here. Stay tuned. And if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. If you like this video, hit that like button. And I want to see what you guys think about this reel down below in the comment section. If you thought I'm an idiot for making this video, go ahead and let me know. What do you think? Am I a 13 Fishing fanboy? Am I a Daiwa fanboy? Am I a Shimano fanboy? Am I a Penn fanboy? Come on, let me know. Let me know your thoughts down below. And with all that being said, tight lines, and I shall see you soon. Don't want to hit that start streaming button.